The rain hammered against the hospital window like 1,000 desperate fists, each drop a reminder that time was running out. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold glass, her breath fogging the view of the parking lot below where her rusted Honda sat alone under a flickering streetlight. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed for the 7th time that hour. Another bill collector, another threat, another reminder that choosing between her daughter's treatment and keeping the lights on wasn't really a choice at all. She'd sold everything worth selling, borrowed from everyone worth asking, and still, the number on the medical invoice grew larger, while the number in her bank account shrank to nothing. But what broke her wasn't the money. It was the look in Emma's eyes that morning, when her 7-year-old daughter had whispered, "Mommy, if I'm too expensive, it's okay if I go to heaven early." That's when Sarah knew she'd failed at the one job that mattered. She'd been standing at that window for 20 minutes, trying to find the courage to go back into room 447 and pretend everything would be fine, when a voice behind her said, "Excuse me, are you Emma Mitchell's mother?" Sarah spun around, her heart lurching. The woman standing there wasn't a doctor or a nurse. She was younger than Sarah, maybe mid-20s, wearing jeans and a coffee-stained sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She held a worn notebook against her chest like a shield. "Yes," Sarah managed, her voice cracking. "Is something wrong? Is Emma—" "Emma's fine," the woman said quickly, holding up a hand. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. My name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm a writer for the local paper." She paused, seeming to measure her next words carefully. "I heard about your daughter's case from one of the nurses. I'd like to help." Sarah's defenses went up immediately. She'd learned the hard way that help often came with strings attached. Photographers wanting to exploit Emma's suffering for clicks, charities that promised everything and delivered nothing, well-meaning strangers whose interest evaporated the moment they realized how much was actually needed. "Thanks, but we're managing," Sarah lied, the words tasting bitter. Maya didn't move. "Mrs. Mitchell, I know that's not true. I know the hospital is threatening to discharge Emma because you can't pay. I know you've been sleeping in that chair in her room for 6 weeks. I know you haven't eaten anything but vending machine crackers for 3 days." She took a breath. "And I know you're about to lose your apartment because you missed 2 months of rent." Sarah felt the tears she'd been holding back finally break through. "How do you—" "Because I was Emma 6 years ago," Maya said softly. "Different hospital, different illness, same impossible situation. My mother stood exactly where you're standing, and a stranger changed everything for us." She pulled out her notebook, flipping it open to a page dense with handwriting. "I'm not here to write a story about your tragedy. I'm here to help you write a different ending." Over the next hour, sitting in the hospital cafeteria over lukewarm coffee, Maya explained her plan. She'd spent the past 3 years building a following for her, blog about community resilience and everyday heroes. She'd helped organize fundraisers for families in crisis, connected people with resources, and built a network of readers who genuinely wanted to make a difference. "I'll write Emma's story," Maya said, "but not as a sob story. As a celebration of her drawings, her sense of humor, the way the nurses say she's been encouraging other kids on the floor even though she's the sickest one here. I'll show people who she is, not just what she needs, and then we'll give them a way to help." Sarah wanted to hope, but hope had burned her too many times. "Even if people donate, it won't be enough. The treatment costs are over $300,000. "I know." Maya met her eyes. "Trust me." Sarah didn't know why she did, but something in Maya's voice, certainty that came from having stood in this darkness and found the light, made her nod. The article went live 2 days later. Maya had spent hours with Emma, drawing out stories that made the little girl's personality shine through every paragraph. She wrote about how Emma had named all the IV poles on the pediatric floor after Disney princesses, how she'd started a joke of the day tradition that had the nurses laughing despite their exhaustion, how she'd told her mother that when she grew up, she wanted to be a doctor so other kids don't have to be scared. But Maya did something else, something Sarah hadn't expected. She included her own story, how a stranger's kindness had saved her life, and how that gift had taught her that Humanity's greatest power wasn't found in wealth or status, but in the choice to show up for each other in moments of desperate need. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The first donation came within minutes. $50 from a retired teacher in Oregon. Then $100 from a construction worker in Texas. Then another, and another, and another. The hospital's social media lit up with shares. Local news picked up the story. By the evening, donations had reached $10,000. By the next morning, $50,000. Sarah watched the numbers climb in disbelief. But it was what happened next that truly broke her open. People didn't just send money. They sent letters, hundreds of them, addressed to Emma. A class of third graders in Ohio sent hand-drawn cards and a video of them all telling their favorite jokes. A cancer survivor in California sent a care package filled with art, supplies, and a note that said, "Keep making the world more colorful." An elderly veteran sent a medal from his service with a message, "For the bravest soldier I've never met." Maya organized volunteers to read the letters to Emma, and Sarah watched her daughter's face transform with each one. For weeks, Emma had been shrinking into herself, into the illness, into the fear. Now she was expanding again, lit up by the tangible proof that strangers across the country were thinking of her, rooting for her, refusing to let her face this fight alone. The fundraiser reached its goal in 11 days. $300,000 from 8,000 donors in 43 states and 12 countries. The hospital scheduled Emma's treatment immediately, but the story didn't end there. 6 months later, Emma was in remission. Her hair was growing back in wild. Curls, she claimed, made her look like an awesome lion. She'd started second grade, where she organized her own fundraiser, a lemonade stand that raised $400 for the hospital's pediatric ward. Sarah and Maya had become close friends, bound by the kind of connection that forms when someone reaches into your darkest moment and pulls you toward light. They'd started a foundation together, using Maya's platform and Sarah's experience to help other families navigate medical crises. Every month, they featured a new family, sharing their story, connecting them with resources, proving again and again that isolated suffering could transform into collective healing. One evening, as they packed care packages in Sarah's apartment, the one she'd been able to keep, the one that now felt like home again, Emma called out from her bedroom, "Mama, Maya, come see!" They found her surrounded by art supplies, working on a poster. At the top, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "Title her Hero." Below it, she'd drawn hundreds of stick figures, all holding hands in a circle around a small girl in a hospital bed. "Who's her?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside her daughter. Emma looked up, her eyes bright with the clarity that children sometimes possess. "All of them. Maya, you, the nurses, the people who sent me jokes, the grandpa who sent his medal, everyone who helped." She pointed to the stick figures. "They're all heroes, but nobody knows their names. So I'm going to title them. I'm going to make sure everyone knows." Maya knelt on Emma's other side, tears sliding down her face. She thought about the stranger who'd saved her life, whose name she'd never learned. How that nameless kindness had rippled forward, creating waves that reached Emma and would reach countless others through the foundation. "That's perfect, sweet girl," Maya whispered, "because that's what humanity is. Not the famous people or the rich people or the powerful people. It's all the hers and hims and thems who see someone drowning and jump in to save them, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody will remember their names." Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them, holding tight to this moment. This proof that selflessness wasn't rare or extraordinary. It was everywhere, waiting to be activated, ready to transform tragedy into hope whenever someone made the choice to care about a stranger's suffering as much as their own. Emma went back to her drawing, adding more stick figures, more hands reaching toward the center. Sarah and Maya watched her work, understanding that this little girl who'd come so close to being lost had learned life's most essential truth, that we're all connected by invisible threads of compassion, and that pulling on those threads, choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier, choosing generosity when selfishness would be safer, choosing to see our shared humanity even in strangers was how miracles happened. Not through divine intervention or magical thinking, but through the deliberate, radical act of caring for each other. One person at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. That was the real miracle. Not that Emma survived, but that 8,000 strangers chose to care whether she did. That Maya turned her own suffering into a roadmap for helping others. That Sarah found strength she didn't know she possessed. That an impossible situation became possible. Because people refused to accept that a child's life should depend on her mother's bank account. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Tomorrow, they'd feature another family on the blog. Another Emma somewhere, another Sarah standing at another window, learning that she didn't have to carry the weight alone. Learning that humanity, at its core, was a net woven from thousands of small acts of courage and compassion, strong enough to catch anyone who fell. And it all started with someone deciding to show up, to see the suffering, to say, I can help, to be one more nameless hero whose kindness would ripple forward into infinity, touching lives they'd never meet, creating hope in places they'd never see, proving that the power to change the world didn't belong to the few. It belonged to everyone who chose to use it. Everyone who answered the call. Everyone who earned the title her, him, them, us. Hero!